สวัสดีค่ะวันนี้นะคะโอ๊ตเซิร์ชได้เซิร์ชแล้วก็มีอาร์ติเคิลอันนี้นะคะเป็นการอ่านครั้งแรกเลยนะคะเกี่ยวกับนิทานนะคะภาษาอังกฤษเขาเรียกว่า fables นะคะ F-A-B-L-E fable ถ้าหลายๆเรื่องก็มี S ด้วย fables นะคะแล้วก็บางทีก็จะเห็นเขาเขียนว่า Aesop fables นะคะก็คือนิทานอีสปนั่นเองนะคะเป็นเรื่องที่เล่ากันต่อกันมาเรื่อยๆใช่ไหมโปรดมั่นใจอย่างยิ่งยวดว่าวันนี้จะต้องอ่านผิดเป็นกระบุงหลายๆกระบุงเยอะแยะมากมายเลยนะคะเพราะว่ายังไม่เคยอ่านมาก่อนแล้วเรื่องก็ยาวด้วยนะคะเริ่มกันเลย Preface The tale, the parable, and the fables are all common and popular modes of conveying instructions. Each is distinguished by its own special characteristics. The tale consists simply in the narration of a story, either founded on facts or created solely by the imagination, and not necessarily associated with the teachings of any moral lessons. The parable is the designed use of language, purposely intended to convey a hidden and secret meaning other than that contained in the words themselves, and which may or may not bear a special reference to the hearer or reader. The fable partly agrees with and partly differs from both of these. It will contain, like the tale, a short but real narrative. It will seek, like the parable, to convey a hidden meaning, and that not so much by the use of language, as by the skillful introductions of fictitious characters, and yet, unlike to either tale or parable, it will ever keep in view as its high prerogative and inseparable attribute the great purpose of instructions, and will necessarily seek to inculcate some moral maxim, social duty, and political truth. The true fable, if its purpose representations of human motive and the improvements of human conduct, and that it so conceals its design under the disguise of fictitious characters, by clothing with speech the animals of the field, the birds of the air, the trees of the wood, or the beasts of the forest, that the reader shall receive advice without perceiving the presence of advisors. Thus, the superiority of the consoler, which often readers conceal unpalatable, is kept out of view, and the lesson comes with the greater acceptance when the reader is led unconsciously to himself to have his sympathies enlisted in behalf of what is pure, honorable, and praiseworthy, and to have his indignation excited against what is low, ignoble, and unworthy. The true fabulist, therefore, discharges a most important function. He is neither a narrator nor an allegorist. He is a great teacher, a corrector of morals, a censor of vice, and a commender of virtue. In this consists the superiority of the fables over the tale or the parable. The fabulist is to concrete a laugh, but yet under a moral guise, to convey instruction. Paradus, the great imitator of Aesop, plainly indicates this double purpose to be the true office of the writer of fable. The continual observance of these twofold aims creates the charm and accounts for the universal favor of the fables of Aesop. The fable, says Professor K.O. Bowler, originated in Greece in an international travestite of human affairs. The Enos, as its name denotes, is an admonition or rather a reproof viewed either from fear of excess of frankness or from a love of fun and jest. Beneath the fictions of occurrence happening among beasts, and whether we have any ancient and authentic accounts of the Aesopian fables, we find it to be the same. The construction of a fable involves a minute attention to 1. The narration itself, 2. The deductions of the moral, and 3. A careful maintenance of the individual characteristics of the fictitious personages introduced into it. The narration should relate to one simple action consistent with itself and neither be overladen with a multiplicity of detail, nor distracted by a variety of circumstances. The moral or lesson should be so plain and so intimately interwoven with, and so necessarily dependent on, the narration that every reader should be compelled to give to it the same undeniable interpretation. Oh, I'm so sorry, it's very difficult with many words. The introductions of the animals or fictitious characters should be marked with an unexceptionable care and attention to their natural attributes and to the qualities attributed to them by universal popular consent. The fox should be always cunning, the hare timid, the lion bold, the wolf cruel, the bull strong, the horse proud, and the ass patient. Many of these fables are characterized by the strictest observance of these rules. They are occupied with one short narrative, from which the moral naturally flows, and with which is intimately associated. "'Tis the simple manner," says Dulles, too, "in which the moral of Aesop are interwoven with his fables that distinguish him and gives him the preference over all other mythologies. His mountain the level of a mouse produces the moral of his fable in ridicule of pompous pretenders, and his crow, when she drops her cheese, lets fall, as it were by accident, the strongest domination against the powers of flattery. There is no need of separate sentence to explain it, no possibility of impressing the deeper. By that Lord we too often see of accumulated reflections. 3. An equal amount of praise is due for the consistency with which the characters of the animals fictitiously introduced are marked. While they are made to depict the motives and passions of men, they retained in an eminent degree their own special features of craft or concept of cowardice or courage, of generosity or rapacity. These terms of praise, it must be confessed, cannot be bestowed on all the fables in these collections. Many of them lack that unity of design, that close connections of the moral with the narrative, that wise choice in the introductions of the animals, which constitute the charm and excellency of true Aesopian fables. This inferiority of some to others is sufficiently accounted for in the history of the origin and descent of these fables. The great bulk of them are not the immediate work of Aesop. Many are obtained from ancient authors prior to the time in which he lived. That the fable of the hawk and the nightingale is related by Hesiod, for the eagle, wounded by an arrow, winged with its own feathers. By Aeschylus, 5. The fox avenging his wrong on the eagle. By Archilochus, 6. Many of them again are of later origin and are to be traced to the monks of the Middle Ages, and yet this collection, though thus made up of fables both earlier, because he composed so large number, are framed in the same mold and conformed to the same fashion, and stamped with the same lineaments, image, and superscriptions, as to secure to himself the right to be considered the father of Greek fables, and the founder of this class of writing, which had ever since borne his name, and has secured for him through all succeeding ages the position of the first of moralists. 7. The fables were in the first instance only narrated by Aesop, and for a long time were handed down by the uncertain channel of oral tradition. Socrates is mentioned by Plato as having employed his time while in prison, awaiting the return of the sacred ship. I don't know how to read that. From Delphi, which was to be the signal of his death. In turning some of these fables into verse, but he thought versify only such as are remember Demetrius Phalelas, a philosopher at Athens about 300 BC, is said to have made the first collection of these fables. Paras is loved by birth or by subsequent misfortune, and admitted by Augustus to the honors of freedmen. Imitated many of these fables in Latin iambic about the commencements of the Christian era. Aphthonius, rhetorician of Antioch, AD 315, wrote a treatise on and converted into Latin prose some of these fables. This translation is the more worthy of notice, as it illustrates a custom of common use both in this and in later times. The rhetoricians and philosophers were accustomed to give the fables of Aesop as an exercise to their scholars, not only inviting them to discuss the moral of the tale, but also to practice and to perfect themselves thereby in style and rules of grammar, by making for themselves new various versions of the fables. Ausonius IX, the friend of the Emperor Valentinian, and the latest poet of eminence in the Western Empire, has handed down some of these fables in verse, which Julianus Titianus, a contemporary writer of no great name, translated into prose. Avienus, also a contemporary of Ausonius, put some of these fables into Latin elegies, which are given by Neuvillette in a book we shall refer to hereafter, and are occasionally incorporated with the editions of Fadus. 7th century elapsed before the next notice is found of fables of Aesop. During this long period, these fables seem to have suffered an eclipse, to have disappeared and to have been forgotten, and it is at the commencement of the 14th century when the Byzantine emperors were the great patrons of learning, and amidst the splendors of an Asiatic court, that we next find honors paid to the name and memory of Aesop. Maxima Planders, a learned monk of Constantinople, made a collections of about 150 of these fables. Little is known of his history. Planders, however, was no mere recluse. Shut up in his monastery, he took an active part in public affairs. In 1327 AD, he was sent on a diplomatic mission to Venice by the Emperor Andronicus the Elder. This brought him into immediate contact with the Western patriarch, whose interests he henceforth advocated with so much zeal as to bring on him suspicions and persecutions from the rulers of the Eastern Church. Plunders has been exposed to a twofold accusations. He is charged on the one hand with having had before him a copy of Barbarous, to whom we shall have occasion to refer at greater length in the end of this preface, and to have had the bad taste to transpose or to turn his poetical versions into prose. And he is asserted on the other hand never to have seen the fables of Aesop at all, but to have him invented and made a fable which he palmed off under the name of the famous Greek fables. The truth lies between these two extremes. Planudes may have invented some few fables or have inserted some that were current in his day, but there is an abundance of unanswerable internal evidence to prove that he had an acquaintance with the veritable fables of Aesop, although the versions he had access to were probably corrupt, as contained in the various translations and distinguished exercises of the rhetoricians and philosophers. His collection is interesting and important not only as the parent source or foundations of the earlier printed versions of Aesop, but as the direct channel of attracting to these fables the attention of the learned. The eventually reintroductions, however, of these fables of Aesop to their high praise in the general literature of Christendom is to be looked for the West rather than in the East. The calamities gradually thickening round the Eastern Empire and the fall of Constantinople 1453 AD combined with other events to promote the rapid restorations of learning in Italy, and with that recovering of learning, the revolt of an interest in the fables of Aesop is closely identified. These fables, indeed, were among the first writings of an earlier antiquity that attracted attention. They took their place beside the Holy Scriptures and the ancient classic authors. In the mind of the great students of that day, Lorenzo Valla, one of the most famous promoters of Italian learning, not only translated into Latin the Iliad of Homer and the histories of Herodotus and Thucydides, but also the fables of Aesop. These fables, again, were among the books brought into an extended circulation by the agency of the printing press, Bonus Aquarius, as early as 1475 to 1480, printed the collection of these fables made by Planudes, which within 5 years afterwards Cacton translated into English and printed at his press in Westminster Abbey, 1485. Then it must be mentioned also that the learning of this age has left permanent traces of its influence on these fables. 11. By causing the interpolation with them of some of those amusing stories which were so frequently introduced into the public discourses of the great preachers of those days, and of which specimens are yet to be found in the extant sermons of Jean Lolin, Method, and Gabriel Bartlett. 12. The publication of these era which most probably has influenced these fables is the Liber Festurum. 13. A book consisting of 100 jests and stories by the Servetus Paccio Baxiolini, published AD 1471, from which the two fables of the miller, his sons, and the ass, and the fox, and the woodcutter are undoubtedly selected. The knowledge of this fable rapidly spread from Italy into Germany, and their popularity was increased by the favor and sanction given to them by the great fathers of the Reformation, who frequently used them as vehicles for satire and protest against the tricks and abuses of the Romish exorcistic, the zealous and renowned camerers who took an active part in the preparations of the confessions of Augustus, found time amidst his numerous avocations to prepare a versions for the student in the University of Tübingen, in which he was a professor. Martin Luther translated 20 of these fables and was urged by Melanchthon to complete the whole, while Gottfried Arnold, the celebrated Lutheran theologian and librarian of Frederick I, King of Prussia, mentions that the great reformer valued the fable of Aesop next after the Holy Scripture. In 1546 AD, the second printed edition of the collections of the fables made by Planudes was issued from the printing press of Robert Stephen, in which were inserted some additional fable from a miss in the Bibliothèque du Roi at Paris. The greater advance, however, towards a reintroduction of the fables of Aesop to a place in the literature of the world was made in the early part of the 7th century. In the year 1610, a learned Swiss, Isaac Nicholas Newlet, sent forth the third printed edition of this fable in a work entitled Mythologia Aesopica. This was a noble effort to do honor to the great fabulist and was the most perfect collection of Aesopian fables ever yet published. It consisted, in addition to collections of fables given by Planudes and reprinted in various earlier editions, of 136 new fables never before published from MSS. In the Library of the Vatican are 40 fables attributed to Aphthonius, and of 43 from Babrius. It also contained the Latin versions of the same fables by Pedrus, Avicenna, and other authors. This volume of nevertheless formed a complete corpus fabularum Aesopicarum, and to his labors Aesop owes his restoration to universal favor as one of the wise moralists and great teachers of mankind. During the interval of 3 centuries which has elapsed since the publication of these volumes of nevertheless no book, with the exceptions of the Holy Scriptures, has had a wider circulation than Aesop's fables. They have been translated into greater number of the languages both of Europe and the East, and have been read and will be read for generations alike by Jews, heathen, Mohammedan, and Christian. They are at the present time not only engrafted into the literature of the civilized world, but are familiar as household words in the common intercourse and daily conversations of the inhabitants of our country. These collections of knowledge is the great culminating point in the history of the revival of the famed and reputation of Aesopian fables. It is remarkable also as containing in its preface the germ of an idea, which has been since proved to have been correct by a strange chain of circumstances. Nevertheless, intimates an opinion that a writer named Babrius would be found to be the veritable author of the existing form of Aesop's fables. This intimation has since given rise to a series of inquiries, the knowledge of which is necessary in the present day to a full understanding of the true position of Aesop, its connection with the writing that bear his name. The history of Babrius is so strange and interesting that it might not unfitly be enumerated among the curiosities of literature. He is generally supposed to have been a Greek of Asian Minor, often of the Ionic colonies, but the exact period in which he lived and wrote is yet unsettled. He is praised by one critic 14 as far back as the institutions of the Ancient League BC 250, by another as late as the Emperor Severus, who died AD 235, while others make him a contemporary with Paris in Paris in the time of Augustus. At whatever time he wrote his versions of Aesop, by some strange accident it seemed to have entirely disappeared and to have been lost sight of. His name is mentioned by Avinas, by Sudas, a celebrated critic at the close of the 11th century, who gave in his lexicon several isolated verses of his version of the fables, and by John Thesis, a grammarian and poet of Constantinople, who lived during the later half of the 12th century. Nevertheless, in the preface to the volume which we have described, points out that the fables of Plato could not be the work of Aesop, as they contain a reference into praises to holy monks and give out verse from the Epistle of Saint James as an epimyth. The ones of the fables and suggest Babrius as their author. Francis Vavasor, 15, a learned French Jesus, entered at greater length on his subject and produced further proofs from internal evidence from the use of the word Paris in describing the harbor of Athens, a name which was not given till 200 years after Aesop, and from the introductions of other modern words, that many of these fables must have been at least committed to writing posterior to the time of Aesop, and more bluntly suggests Babrius as their author or collector. 16. These various references to Babrius induced Dr. Pilchard's Bentley at the close of the 17th century to examine more minutely the existing versions of Aesop's fables, and he maintained that many of them could, with a slight change of words, be resolved into the Saxonic 17 iambics, in which Babrius is known to have written, and with a greater freedom than the evidence that justified he put forth in behalf of Babrius, and claimed to the exclusive authorship of these fables. Such a seemingly extravagant theory, thus roundly asserted, excited much position. Dr. Bentley 18 met with an able antagonist in member of the University of Oxford, the Hon. Mr. Charles Boyle, 19 afterwards Earl of Orrery. Their letters and disputations on this subject enliven, I'm so sorry, on both sides, which much with a learning will ever bear conspicuous place in the literary history of the 17th century. The arguments of Dr. Bentley were yet further defended a few years later by Mr. Thomas Tyrwhitt, a well-read scholar, who gave up high civil distinctions that he might devote himself to more unreservedly to literature pursuit. Mr. Tyrwhitt published A.D. 1776 a dissertation on Babrius and a collection of his fables in Colyambic meter found in MS in the Bodleian Library at Oxford. Okay, MS is Mississippi. Francesco de Foria, a learned Italian, contributed further testimony to the correctness of the suppositions that Babrius had made a veritable collections of fables by printing from a Mississippi. Contained in the Vatican Library, several fables never before published. In the year 1844, however, new and unexpected light was thrown upon these subjects. A veritable copy of Babrius was found in a manner as singular as were in MSS of Quintilian's Institutes and of Cicero orations by Poggio in the monastery of St. Gall, A.D. 1416, Eminois, and the suggestions of M. Velleman, Minister of Public Instructions of King Louis Philip, had been entrusted with a commission to search for ancient MSS, and in carrying out his instruction, he found a MS at the convent of St. Laura on Mount Athos, which proves to be a copy of the long suspected and wished for Colyambic versions of Babrius. This MS was found to 25 and the other 95 fables. This discovery attracted very general attention, not only as confirming in a singular manner the conjecture so boldly made by a long chain of critics, but as bringing to light valuable literary treasures tending to establish the reputation and to confirm the antiquity and authenticity of the great mass of Aesopian fable. The fable thus recovered was soon published. Therefore, a most worthy translator enquiry qualified for his task in the Reverend James Davis, M.A., sometime a scholar of Lincoln College, Oxford, and himself a relation of their English editor. Thus, after an eclipse of many centuries, Burris shined out as the earliest and most reliable collector of variable Aesop fables โหยยาวมากๆเลยจะบอกให้เหนื่อยแล้วก็อ่านผิดเยอะจริงๆชื่อคนก็ยากคือโดยรวมๆพวกก็พยายามคิดตามนะแต่ว่ามันคิดตามทั้งหมดไม่ได้เพราะติดอ่านไม่ออกด้วยแล้วก็ไม่รู้ความหมายของคำศัพท์ด้วยนะคะแต่ว่าทั่วๆไปจับใจความได้ว่ามันเป็นประวัตินั่นแหละเรื่องราวของนักเขียนที่เขาเขียนเอาไปปรับปรุงแล้วก็ตีพิมพ์แล้วก็ปรับปรุงแล้วก็ตีพิมพ์นะเวอร์ชั่นใครเวอร์ชั่นมันก็เป็นการท้าทายตัวเอง challenge นะคะคืออ่านยาวๆแล้วก็คำศัพท์ยากๆไม่รู้เรื่องก็ทุกคนก็ลองดูซิว่าตัวเองจะเป็นอย่างไรนะคะไปละโป๊ดเหนื่อยแล้วสวัสดีนะคะ